You see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
We're extremely honored to have this gentleman speak to us. And if you've been living in the cave for the last 50 years, he was a Major League Baseball player from 1980 till he retired in 1993. He started out with the Philadelphia Phillies, which we'll forgive him for. Went to the Atlanta Braves for a short season and finished most of his playing time with the Pittsburgh Pirates here. He was, in his rookie year, won Game 1 of a World Series. That's pretty impressive, very impressive. He was nicknamed the Whirly Bird. We need to hear that story. And he's now the voice of the Pirates on the Pittsburgh Sports Next. So glad to have him here. Give it up for Mr. Bob Walk.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. No, I was noticing everybody that's up here, I don't think we've had any shoelaces up here yet. I don't have any shoelaces on. There's probably not a lot of shoelaces in the room, I'll bet. Oh, no, there's some right there. Young lady has some right there, too. Yeah, I did this a couple years ago where after my introduction and all the great things, well, it's been a few years now because I don't think I've been here since COVID. Is that correct? 2009. So, but before that, it was like a yearly event. So you guys that were here then know me extremely well. But like, for instance, I'll start off with I started the first game of a World Series and was the winning pitcher my rookie year. That sounds like fantastic. That sounds fantastic. But the reason that happened wasn't because I was this great pitcher or anything. I mean, we had Steve Carlton, the Hall of Famer, on the thing, but he had thrown like 9 innings 2 days ago, so he couldn't pitch. And every other starter and player, pitcher on the team, of course, back then we didn't have 15 pitchers. We only had, well, sometimes we had 9, sometimes we had 10. I was the only one that hadn't pitched. So it was kind of like last man standing is why I ended up pitching that game. And I lasted into the 8th inning, so I gave him a little worry in the first couple innings. It looked like I wasn't going to last 2 innings, but then I got on a roll, and we ended up winning the game, and I got that win. But that's why I happened to pitch that game, was just because I was the only one there that wasn't dead tired from that. I think we had back then the games, the playoff games. There was only one set of playoff games back then, and then the World Series. And it was just a 5-game playoff. And 4 of those 5 games went extra innings. So there was a lot of work to be done, but I didn't get any of that work. I mean, the last day, I knew going into Game 5, they'd already told me, you aren't pitching the day under any circumstances, because hopefully we'll win this game and you're going to start the next game. So I knew I wasn't going to pitch 5. But anyway, that's how that came about. They were so unimpressed with my rookie year, even though I did decent. They shipped me off the next spring training down to Atlanta, where I stunk for a couple of years. First year I was there, we had that middle of the season strike, so that saved me from having a bad season there because I sat out most of the time. And then the next year we had Joe Torre came down, and I was in the rotation for probably the first 2/3 of the season. Pitched pretty well, but then got into a little bit of a rut. I think it was probably, I don't know, middle of August or so. He told me that, I'd had like 3 bad starts in a row. I was still tied with the team for wins. I mean, me and Necro had the most wins on the team. I think we had 11 at that point. And they told me that they were going to skip me a turn, maybe 2 turns, put me in the bullpen so that I could rest my arm a little bit because they thought I was just getting worn out. And I never saw the starting rotation again the rest of the season. And I think I pitched out of the bullpen maybe 3 times in 6 weeks. So they just hid me there. And so then that told me what was going on. Writing was on the wall. Next year they sent me to Richmond. I spent almost all season in Richmond, and then got released. Johnny Sane was the pitching coach for the Richmond team. He loved me. His best friend in all of baseball was Chuck Tanner. So I went, all the guys down there, the general manager, the director of the minor leagues, and the manager for the AAA team in Richmond, they all had meetings with me after they released me. They had got in touch with me, said, could you come in? We'd like to have a meeting with you. The general manager of the team had just given me a release, and he said he wanted to re-sign me to go to Richmond. The director of minor leagues, I went in and sat in his office across from him, a guy named Hank Aaron. He said, please re-sign with us, go to the minor leagues, we'll get you back to the big leagues. The AAA manager ran into me somewhere, pulled me aside, told me the same thing. And then I went out to Johnny Sane's. Johnny was a funny guy. He was very frugal, let's say. Of course, back then baseball players, when he played, didn't make big money or anything like that. And he wasn't married or anything, so he lived in a small RV in a local KOA. That's where he stayed during spring training. So I went over to see him, and we got really close the year before. And so I sat there. We talked about all kinds of things, about my career and what he thought I needed to do from here and that sort of thing. And I told him about everybody wanting me to come back, and he said, well, he goes, I sit in those meetings. Joe Torre was the manager, and Bob Gibson was the pitching coach. And he said, as long as Joe and Bob are calling the shots, you'll never pitch in Atlanta again. He goes, you've gotten in their doghouse, and I don't think you're ever coming out. And so he goes, you're a free agent now? He goes, you go wherever you think you can go. And I said, well, God, I don't even know the first thing what to do. I guess I'll just have to get in touch with my agent. He's going to have to start making phone calls. And he said, well, he goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, I'll call Chuck. And I knew that they were like the best friends, and see what they can do. So he called Tanner. This was before cell phones. I got a message at my apartment somehow, and I went and called Chuck. And Chuck said, hey, Johnny Sane just talked to me, said you can help us. He goes, his word is gold by me. It's the end of spring training. I don't got a spot for you right now. I can't put you on the roster. He says, but if you'll go to Hawaii and play AAA, by the middle of the year, if I don't have a spot for you in my team, I'll find you a spot on another team in the major leagues, as long as you're pitching well. And I said, okay, deal. And that's how I became a Pirate. So, and then, that's a little lesson, I think, that things that you think are really bad, like, getting fired, released, however you want to say it, it's like, you don't know what that's going to lead to, what other doors might open up. And not only did I become a Pirate, well, after I became a Pirate, then I became a Pirate announcer. And, I've lived in the same house now for over 30 years. My kids grew up here. One of my 3 kids was born here. All my grandkids have been born here. They're all still living here. It was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life was getting released to go my own way. I just, at first I was really bitter about it. But, thinking back over the years, I'm like, well, why be bitter? Just, you got to move on and do some other things. We'll take a quick question right now, but then we can't do it. But go ahead.
Did you have a little chip on your shoulder whenever you pitched against Atlanta?
Yeah, I did, definitely. Which I think sometimes didn't work out, and maybe sometimes it did. I don't know, but yeah, when I pitched against Atlanta after that, I always wanted to beat them really bad. One of the things that I wanted to beat them when the guys who released me were running things, but they both got fired the next year, so I didn't. So that went away pretty quick. I will tell you a real quick funny story though. About a couple years later, back then you had roommates, especially in the minor leagues, and you had them also in the big leagues most of the time. My roommate in Atlanta and Richmond was a fellow pitcher named Rick Mailer. I don't know if you guys remember him or not. Real good guy, starting pitcher. Had a couple of real good seasons down in Atlanta after I had left. And he had a pretty good season in '82 when we were teammates there. Anyway, we became like best friends, and he I can't remember exactly what it was. He had something like 17 wins or something, like 16, I don't know. He was having a fantastic year, and they were coming in to play Pittsburgh, and I had been pitching pretty good. I resurrected my career, was pretty good, and it lined up where we were pitching against each other. And I never really worried too much about my hitting or anything, but when I saw that coming up, I went in that cage every day. I was going to be ready to hit off Rick. I was going to. So I got all ready, and here's the day comes, home game, so I'm out there first, and I don't get out of the first inning. I'm taken out of the game. First inning, I can't get anybody out. I might have got one out in that game, and that was it. And I'd spent a whole week not worrying about the pitching. All I worried about was hitting, and I couldn't get any out. So that was kind of an embarrassing day against the Braves, against Rick. And we ended up, he pitched terrible too. We ended up winning. So, but that's kind of the way that went. But anyway, that tells you how I got to Pittsburgh and did pretty well. Leyland came along a couple years after I'd been here. At first, he wasn't real impressed, I don't think, as I was in the rotation in '85 when Chuck was running things and pitching pretty well. In '86, I was the last person he told that was going to make the team. He came out to right field like a couple days before spring training is over and says, "Okay, you're making the team. You're the last guy. You'll be starting off in the bullpen, obviously." And he said, he told me, "Get off to a good start because I'm looking for a left-hander." So that was a little thing about Leyland. That was a little message that, hey, this guy is a straight shooter. You're never going to not know where you stand. So he told me, yeah, you made the team, but get off to a good start, because he wanted that spot to go to a left-hand pitcher. They just didn't have one. So I got off to a really good start, and so when they found a lefty, somebody else had to leave. And then from about maybe a month into that season, I was pretty much Leyland's guy after that. He found out that I kept my mouth shut, and I did what he told me to do, and I let things work themselves out the way they worked themselves out. And in the very end, it was a great relationship, and we had a great time, and I ended up being in Pittsburgh for 10 years, and the last 8 under Leyland, and we did a lot of winning there in those last 3 or 4 years. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of great players. I know everybody, Leyland's going to the Hall of Fame this year, great manager, but every time I've ever seen him ask what makes a great manager, he always gives the same answer: great players. That's what makes a great manager. And we had some great ones there, really fantastic. The outfield was amazing with Bonilla, Bonds, and Van Slyke. I mean, hard to put together a better outfield than that was. And then the infield was pretty much the same. We had a couple 20-game winners in our rotation. One of them won a Cy Young. I mean, it was good times back then, and a little bit of lesson that, you know, everybody's always complaining about, oh, we need to change managers, need to change coaches, oh, we need a new hitting coach, all this stuff. The coaches, you guys remember the old TVs, the clunk, clunk, clunk when you're changing channels? And there was a little fine-tuning thing, you know, on there too. That kind of, well, that's what coaches do. You got to be on the right channel, or it's not going to, nothing's going to work. Well, that's like having good players. So I think that kind of moves us into nowadays team. It's not so much who's sitting in that dugout, who's doing this and who's doing that. It's putting the roster together. How many players do we have that are quality, good major league players that can stand up and play against these rosters with the recognizable names? Last year at the end of the season, I thought it was going to be a disaster. Probably, if you want to show of hands, after the trading deadline, we had one starting pitcher and a whole team. I'm sure everybody thought it was going to be a disaster this last 2 months. I went in and told, what's our manager's name? Yes, Shelton. I went in and told Shelty, that's another thing you'll find out about me. I don't know my kids' names half the time. But Shelty, I went in, I was very honest with him. I shook my head. I said, I don't know what you guys are going to do. I go, this could get really bad. I mean, really. And at that point, we were probably looking at 90 losses as far as the rate we were on. We got off to a great start. Month of April was incredible. But, yeah, there was nothing they could do. They had to have all these bullpen games. You know, okay, this guy's going to start. He's going to go maybe 2 innings, and this guy's going to pitch. They planned it out like a spring training games where they're all planned out. And I don't know how they did it. I guess that shows that I'm kind of old-fashioned because I don't understand these new ways. But it worked. They got through it. Now, I still don't think you can do that for a whole season. You need some starting pitchers. And I think that's what they think also, because they went out and they got a couple starting pitchers, guys that have had success in the past, have had kind of a little rough spot, and we'll see how it turns out. They're left-handed. Lefties usually pitch well in our ballpark. So that could turn out to be a good thing, a big plus. But the starting pitching depth is something that we really don't have a whole lot of. And I'm not, like at this time last year, I would be extremely worried about it. But now I think to myself, well, we could use a little luck. We had a lot of injuries and stuff last year. Can't happen again 2 years in a row. The starting rotation, I mean, they should be healthier this year. And then with the 2 guys, the veteran 2 guys coming in, hopefully they'll add a little stability to that rotation. And the starters might be okay. And if we have to, the bullpen proved last year that they can play that bullpen game deal pretty well and do a good job. We got a great back end. If we can get the lead going into the 7th inning, we're going to win most of those games. And now you got Chapman, one of the hardest throwers ever in the game. He's 35 years old, but what I understand, he still averages 99 miles an hour with that fastball. So he's still got great stuff. He's a little wild, which can be good and bad. The good thing is that if I'm standing up there at home plate and this guy's throwing 100 mile an hour, I don't want to hear that he can be a little wild. So that's the good part of it. But then the bad part of it is, you know, he might get through an inning, but it might take him 35, 40 pitches because he walked 3 guys. He's going to have outings like that too. But on the good nights, he'll just blow right through people. So that was a very interesting addition. I didn't think they would go that route. It would surprise me that we added to the bullpen because the bullpen, I think, is the stronger part of our pitching staff. Well, now it's even a little stronger. So that, I think, was a good move. The other question mark that hopefully is going to be a big plus for us is the shortstop position. I mean, you know, last year when O'Neill Cruz, you know, broke his leg right there, I don't know, it was early May or something like that. It was very early in the season. I mean, we were like about 10 games over 500, and everybody was shaking their heads going, what's going on? You know, We were in first place, I think. So that, I think, showed everybody what losing him meant. And he wasn't even playing up to what we think is his potential. I mean, this guy could be a MVP type player. He could be like McCutchen for the next 10 years, like he was. I mean, that's the talent level he has. Now, having the talent level and doing it, those are two different things. And last year should have been the year we found out. Now everything's shifted, and now it's going to be this year we're going to find out exactly how good he is. But if he's as good as we hope he is, that's going to be tremendous for our offense, and we'll score a lot more runs this year just with him in there. So that's kind of where I'm hoping for on that regard. One question mark area where I'm concerned and still concerned is the catching part of it. It's been a long time since we've probably got to go back to maybe Russell Martin, to where we've had a catcher that was really a two-way player that was good enough on defense and could be a big contributor with the bat. As it stands right now, it's going to be a long shot for us to have that this year, but we'll see what happens. And we'll see who gets the playing time, and the spring training will be very interesting to see who's getting the most work behind the plate, and who's hitting, and who could actually catch, not catch. That's going to be an interesting position to see. Everything else, you know who's going to be in center field, left field, third base. Hayes really came on strong with the bat last year. Everybody, since he's first been up here, knows, okay, he's the best defensive glove third baseman in the game. Hopefully he'll be able to hit. And we saw some he hit a little bit, he hit a little bit, he hit a little bit. Last year, something finally clicked with him, and he started mashing the ball and doing it with some consistency. I think he's more than anything else, and just seeing him for a little bit at Pirate Fest, talking to him for maybe 60 seconds, he seems like, before he was always real quiet, didn't want to say a whole lot, which a lot of young guys are. He was still not like he wasn't like being really loud and going crazy or anything, but you could tell the confidence level was way higher. I think I asked him, how long before you leave for Florida or something, before you get real quiet. I'm not sure when I'm going to go down there. Now it was like, right away. Oh, I'm leaving in a week. I'll be down there. I'm staying out this. It's like, wow, who's this guy? He's a different guy. He's more like his dad. His dad was really outgoing. Is really outgoing. Was always a very confident player. He was, one of my. He wasn't a Pirate for very long, but when he was here, he was one of my favorite guys. But his son was really calm and quiet. But I think that's coming out a little bit more. And I'm thinking that his offense and that attitude are tied together with him. So.
How about first base?
Apparently we like real heavy first basemen. I don't know. Yeah, over the last few years we've done that. I don't know. Rowdy is, he's a real big guy and he can hit the ball 100 miles. He's not real consistent. Has a hard time against lefties. So it's probably going to be kind of a platoon situation, with him. Who the right-handed part of that platoon, I don't know. We'll wait and see. I'm curious how that goes. I've even now I don't believe this for a moment, but I've even heard McCutchen's name brought up. Could he? No, I don't think that's going to happen. But who knows? If I saw him out there in spring training, maybe 9 o'clock in the morning taking ground balls at first, I wouldn't be shocked. But it would be a surprise to me, Henry Davis could, he's supposed to catch, but, maybe they think that if they can find another catcher, maybe they'll put him at first base. The Davis thing, he didn't catch all of last year. No, I take that back. I don't go on the road much anymore. He did catch 2 innings on the road in a game that I wasn't watching, so he did. But if they really thought he was going to be a catcher or could catch, and it wasn't like we had an everyday catcher last season. We needed some other people, but they still didn't use him. So I don't know. It's kind of like the McCutcheon thing. I hear that, okay, this might be a possibility. Actually, with Davis, it's more than a possibility. They've come out and said, yeah, he's going to catch. Well, I want to see how it works out in spring training to see if he can catch, see how it goes. Okay, it's time, I think, to start. I see hands coming up and stuff. We'll go way to the back at first because that was the first hand that was up.
Johnny Votto retired from the Cincinnati Reds. Would there be a possibility to get him?
You know, I doubt it because I think he's very proud that he was a Red his whole career. You know, I don't know what it would take to get him out of retirement. I would say that was a long shot. The first phone call he got from us, he would probably just hang it up. We would have to call him 5 or 6 times to actually get a conversation going. But I mean, never say never. You know, I don't know exactly what he's got left, but I mean, this ballpark's made for him, that's for sure. So it would be great to get him years ago, but I don't know now. Yes, sir.
What about Bednar? Will they be offering him a long-term contract today?
By the end of this year, they probably will. I would be a little surprised if they do it before they see which way the wind's blowing this season as far as the team. If we're playing well, they don't want him going anywhere. If we come out of the first 2 months and we're getting killed and we're not doing well, injuries, whatever reason, then I think, you know, he could be traded then because they don't have a lot of pieces where they could get quality back, and he's one of them. And, I mean, this is nothing to knock Bednar for sure, but if you look at our history going way back, go back 20, 30 years, however far back you want to go, we've always been able to find a good closer. That's one thing we've always had. There's been so many years where we've had one guy go to the All-Star game, and that one guy's been our closer. If you have the right makeup and the right stuff and you're a strike thrower, you can go out there and you can be a closer. I mean, that's who was the longtime St. Louis Cardinal manager that La Russa, there you go. You should get up here and sit right here next to me. I know he's written a couple of books. I think in one of his books he said that the easiest position on his roster to fill is closer. That's the one that he's not really worried about. You know, there's the toughest are home run hitters and starting pitchers. Those are the toughest to find that quality. So that's why I would think that they might move him if we're not playing well. But if we're playing well, no, they're not going to move him, and they'll try to get him to stay around. It wouldn't be a long-term contract, but they, you know, maybe like a 3-year contract, something like that. I could see them offering him that, and him signing it. So, yes, sir.
Quite an honor for us to hear you speak, and I'm very thankful that you are here with us today, because now there'll be a name behind the face in the stories when we watch you or listen to you on concert. So thank you for coming. But my questions are 2. 1, how many pitches does a pitcher in the major leagues today have to be able to execute? And of those pitches, what's the most difficult pitch to throw and execute?
How many does it? What was the first question? How many does he have to throw?
How many pitches does a pitcher normally have in there?
Oh.
And which is the most difficult to execute?
The bullpen guys normally are 2-pitch guys. Now there are examples. Bednar is a good example that you can have more than that. But a lot of bullpen guys, especially closers, are 2-pitch guys. They'll have some sort of off-speed pitch and a dominant fastball. one of those two pitches, no matter what it is going to be kind of like a trick pitch or like Bruce Sutter going way back. He had the great, forkball splitter, whatever you want to call it. The guy down in San Diego, the Hells Bells guy. Hoffman. Phenomenal changeup. Just an amazing changeup that did, nobody could stay back long enough to hit it. So those are the two pitches. Now, as a starting pitcher, and this is starting to change in baseball a little because of starters just don't pitch as long anymore. When you went into a game expecting to go through a lineup 3 times and hoping to go through the lineup 4 times, you needed more than 2 pitches, unless you were just a Steve Carlton-like guy that had you had 2 pitches and they were both dominant. You threw real hard and you had an unhittable slider. Well, he had a 3rd pitch. He had a changeup that he never threw. But you kind of know what I mean. If you're going to see these guys for a 2nd, 3rd, sometimes 4th time, you want to be able to show them some different things, especially the real good hitters that are going to make changes. Some guys, it doesn't matter. You just show them the same thing all night long, and they're either going to hit you or they're not. So I think traditionally a starting pitcher has 4 pitches, and they'll throw a fastball, either a sinker or a 4-seamer. Some guys will throw both. You use the 4-seamer. In my time, a lot of guys use the 4-seamer because the high strike wasn't called. So if you threw balls right here and they didn't swing, it was just ball 1, ball 2, ball 3. Nowadays, they got to swing at it because it's strike 1, strike 2. So that 4-seamer is a little bit more important now because top of the strike zone is a lot higher than it used to be. But before, I would use a 4-seamer if I wanted to throw outside, because for some reason when I throw a 4-seamer, I would get better backspin and the ball would stay straighter. If I threw a 2-seam ball, which aerodynamically is going to have less lift and gravity will be able to take it down quicker, then that ball I would have a tendency sometimes to come off the side of a little bit, and it would get this little motion going. Now it's hard to throw to that side of the plate when your ball's going like this because it wants to run right back down the middle. That's not a good spot to be. So if you had real great control, if you're a Maddox or somebody, you're going to start it 3 inches outside and you're going to catch that corner as it runs back. Well, I would start it on the corner and run it right down the middle of the plate, and that's why Phillies didn't want me in the playoffs that much for that reason. But anyway, so that's what those 2 things. Now, as far as the sliders and the curveballs and the changeup, usually one of those is a dominant number 2 pitch, and then the other 2 will get mixed in when things aren't going good. Sometimes it's a curveball, sometimes it's a slider. Guys can have 2 different kinds of sliders. You can have basically what is a kind of a cut fastball where you're throwing a fastball just coming off the side. You get a little bit of a jump like this right at the end, but you can still throw it pretty hard because your 2 fingers, your power fingers, are staying behind the ball a long time. So you're still throwing it pretty hard, and it's actually going this way a little bit. So that's your small. That was the traditional slider. Over the years, guys start coming around the ball a little bit. They get bigger and bigger. They don't throw it as hard, and now they're just kind of like little short, harder breaking balls or harder curve balls. The traditional curve ball back in the really old days, they just called it a drop because you threw it over the top. Your fingers went over like this, so the ball came out with top spin. And I don't know if you guys play tennis or anything like that, or golf. You put topspin on the ball, it ain't going to carry very far. It's going to go and it's going to go down. Well, that's what the curveball would do. Comes out of your hand with a topspin, boom, goes diving down. If you come around the outside of the ball, you throw what was called like a big sweeper, where it would just go in there, and because it's the side spin like this, now the air coming off this side of the ball over on this side, your right-hander, is going to move faster because it's going with the direction of the seams. The seams on this side of the ball are going that way because you're spinning it like this, so they are impeding the airflow going that way. The higher the seams, the better. A little scuff on it or something, the better. So now the airflow on this side, you know this, the airflow on this side, and it is slow and getting piled up. The air on this side is fast and flying right by. You get low pressure on this side, like the wing of an airplane. So now that ball, you go like this, it starts smoothing like this, sideways. It's just like, and that's where you get that sweeper. So, and that's, I mean, every pitch that moves, and even and the ones that don't move, are because of what the air is doing to it as it's going through there, anywhere from 80 to 100 mile an hour. You get that kind of wind in your face, it's gonna do something to the ball. You know, you don't put any spin on it and throw a knuckleball, it's your guess where it's gonna go. And so that's the whole thing about throwing a knuckleball. But long-winded answer to your question, but there you go. Yes, sir.
As a pitcher, I think I know what you're going to say, but do you think the pitching mound should be higher or lower?
Well, as a pitcher, I say higher, but for a different reason than what you're thinking. It'd be easier on arms. I think they'd have less injuries if it was higher, because it's easier to throw on a downhill slope than off flat ground. And the lower that mound is, I think it puts more pressure on your arm.
Yes, sir. Bob, excuse me, I have a question concerning the Hall of Fame. Now, 3 guys came in last week, and there was a little controversy that one of the guys that didn't make it should have made it, okay? My question is this. Major League Baseball has not penalized these guys that said they admitted it or were accused of using drugs. Their records are still in the record book, okay? No asterisk or anything like that. It seems like the baseball writers have made the decision to keep these guys out of the Hall of Fame. Now,
Go ahead.
some of these guys could have bias. Like, for example, years ago when Ted Williams, when a lot of guys didn't vote for him because he had a love-hate relationship with the Boston press. And it always amazed me, guys like Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Koufax, they never got 100%. So do you think that the baseball writers, I mean, I know that's their job, but they seem like they can really control who goes into that Hall of Fame?
Yeah, they do. And let me ask you this. Is anybody that used an illegal drug like a steroid, is there any of those guys in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, tons of them. Tons of them. How did they get in there? It's because the writers liked them. Like, you talked about Ted Williams. How about Big Papi? What was his name? Junior, no, something Ortiz. Yeah. He was caught and suspended for taking steroids. But he's everybody's hero. He went in first year he was eligible. They're named a bridge, you know, like we got the Clementi Bridge. They got a Big Papi Bridge right there next to the stadium. You know, now he's a steroid guy. What happened? So now the guys that the writers don't like a Barry Bonds, good luck. All that gives them a reason to say. But nobody ever, you know, when I hear these guys talk on the radio or stuff, they're being interviewed, nobody ever says, well, did you vote for this guy? Why'd you do that? How about the 2 guys that were so good down in Houston, the 2 Bs? Yeah. You see pictures of Bagwell now? Well, he's about 145 pounds. You know, I mean, everybody at the time knew what was going on, but nobody cared. So yeah, they look at certain people. Roger Clemens, kind of an asshole, okay? Nobody liked him. Was an unbelievable baseball player and pitcher. But nobody really wants to vote for him, so they don't. And basically he gave them a reason to. So now let me tell you a real quick thing about Clemens. First time I seen him pitch in person was against us. Red Sox were in Winter Haven at the time. He was pitching against us, and he went out in the first inning and just blew us away, like struck out the side on about 12 pitches. Went down the foul line toward where the bullpen was, and while they were hitting, he went down there and did calisthenics. And then when our inning was over, he went straight to the mound from doing exercises, blew us away again, then went down there. It was like, you know how a fighter goes and he just stands, he doesn't take a stool? Not only he doesn't take a stool, he exercised the whole time. And we couldn't get a hit off this guy. We couldn't put a ball in play half the time. He was pretty unbelievable. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Bob, I know that eventually the computer is going to call the strikes out. Do you think that's going to change the game greatly? I do, but I just want your opinion. Because there seems to be many cases when balls are called strikes and strikes are called balls. You think that's going to change the game?
Yeah, but it's got to change the game, but I don't know exactly how. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm curious, because you're right, it's coming. It's going to be here. They've been fine-tuning it in the minor leagues, so I'm not really sure. From what I understand, like in the NFL, you throw a challenge flag. I guess you can challenge a call, like if, and then I think the umpires are actually calling the game down there. If anybody knows different, please let me know. The umpires call the game, and then you can challenge a pitch, and then they'll look at it right now, instantly. They don't have to go to New York or anything. I guess there's somebody in a press box or something. I don't know. Somebody where they have the computer, and the computer will say strike or ball, and then they immediately call down and say, yeah, it was a strike. You either win the challenge or you don't. And then I guess there's so many challenges that you have during a game, and you use them all up. It's whatever. But that's the way it's going to be, I think. It's not going to be like every one is going to be, the computer's not going to say ball one, ball two, strike one, strike two. If there's a pitch that the hitter disagrees with, then he can have them take another look to see what's going on. I think that's the way they're going to go with this.
What do you think it'll affect the pitchers more or the hitters more?
I used to say for sure it was going to affect the hitters more, because I always thought that they had the benefit of the doubt. But now, after watching it really closely, now that they put the thing up there for us, I was wrong. It's going to, I think, unless they make some adjustments, I think there'll be more balls called when they do that, I think. Yes, sir.
Bob, what will it take for the Nuttings to get serious about the Pirates?
Serious and like
Our shortstop, he'll only be here for 2 years.
Yeah.
He'll be gone. Some
Right,
will get him, the
right.
Yankees or the Dodgers.
right. But I think that if I was here last year, you would say the same thing about our left fielder. You would say, hey, I mean, why should we get excited? He'll be gone after this season. Well, no, now he's signed like an 8-year contract.
Yeah.
So I think that, Hayes, they signed Hayes to like a 7-year contract last year. So I think you're going to see them be careful with who they sign. Like, as far as O'Neal Cruz, yeah, he's got great athleticism. It looks like he's going to be a great player. But because of major injuries now, they haven't been able to see him play for a complete year to really say, okay, this is what this guy is. He's worth giving him $20 million a year for the next 8 years. But at this point, you wouldn't do that. That doesn't seem very smart at this point. And Cruz wouldn't take less.
The best pitchers in baseball started with the Pirates.
I can think of only one, and the guy that was with the Yankees now.
Well, and Snell in San Diego. Wasn't he with the Pirates?
In the minor leagues? Oh, okay. I don't know about the minor leagues.
No,
Now, guys that get traded from the minor leagues, I don't know anything about them.
no.
He wasn't with us in the big leagues.
He was here, but we sent him to San Diego to try to play down. I remember.
Yeah, he was here for,
No, you're talking about Ian Snell. That's not what you're talking about. No, he's not talking, he's talking about the guys there now.
Yeah.
That's not Ian Snell. Ian Snell is like 50 years old. No, other than the guy in New York, yeah, other than Cole, And I totally disagreed with that when they traded him. And I told the general manager at the time, we actually had a quiet area where we were having drinks and talking and stuff. And so I was very frank with him. And remember, he traded McCutchen at the same time. And I said, I understand the McCutchen thing. He's not going to be an MVP anymore. And if he wants big money, I see why you would want to move him. Cole is a mistake. And he goes, Cole's not going to sign here, no matter what. And I go, you're telling me that next year we're going to compete, right? And he goes, yeah. And I go, not without Cole. I'd rather you have Cole and then let him walk than trade him, because I think that's where. But it wasn't like he went somewhere else and became a great pitcher. He was an all-star pitcher with us. He just wouldn't sign. He refused to sign. And here's another thing, too, that nobody knows about, 4 years ago, I think, I was we used to have this gathering up at the ski resort, Seven Springs. And I'm standing there at the bar with Nutting and the name of our old general manager, Huntington, yes. I'm standing with both of them, and spending money and stuff comes up, keeping free agents and stuff, and those two names came up in our little three-way conversation. And Nutting right in front of Huntington says he had permission. He did not have to. I didn't say trade those guys that we wanted to save the money. In fact, I told him that you can have that money to keep them. But he traded them anyway for baseball reasons. Now, the three of us are standing like this. And so it wasn't like he's telling me this where he can't hear it. And then and Huntington was just kind of like, yeah, I traded those guys for baseball reasons. But nobody knows that. Everybody thinks that it was this Nutting trying to get rid of a salary for trading those two guys. That's what it was. The general manager at the time thought that was a good baseball move. So,
Well, when you listen to the fan,
when you listen to the fan, you're right. You're right. When you listen to the fan, what did the fan want to do with our football coach that's never had a losing season in the world? They've been wanting to get rid of him for the last 3 years. No, I'm just saying that it's you know what the job of the guys on the fan is? To cause controversy so that it'll piss people off and they'll call the radio station. That's their job. And they're very good at it. But that doesn't mean they have to say stuff that makes sense. They say things that don't on purpose. Yes.
One of the things I think happened with the general manager is years back they were getting that 2-for-1. They give two players. They give a good player away to get two.
Okay, and this is where I got a problem with this. Like the Cole trade. How many guys did we get for Cole? They traded him to Houston. Had to be 5.
5. Yeah.
Okay, so how good are each one of those guys if they're giving us 5? If you're trading a guy like Cole, I want it to be a 1-for-1 deal. You know why? Because whoever you're trading it to, you're getting their absolute best minor league player they have, because it's a 1-for-1 deal. You're getting their premier young player, the guy that is probably going to be an all-star someday. That's the guy you're getting in a 1-for-1 deal.
Right.
You're getting 5 guys that, 3 of them might pan out. Actually, we got real lucky because we did get a decent starting pitcher out of that much. But I think when you do a 5-for-1 trade, usually you're not getting a star player somewhere. You're getting roster filler type guys, and so I'm really against that. Now, if you're trading somebody that is kind of middle of the road type guy for you, and you can get 3 bodies back for him, go ahead, take the chance. Maybe one of those guys will hit. Or maybe you kind of need some roster fillers. I don't know. You can be. I don't know what kind of situation a team that we're talking about might be in, but that's how I feel about those 1-for-5 trades. No, I don't like that at all. Yeah, go ahead, since you've been giving me all the answers.
In that MLB thing that they did before Leyland was inducted, LaRussa flat out said Leyland was better than him. So to see him in the Hall of Fame is just beyond. I mean, he's still the same manager from my generation. Dan both worked the ground he walked on too. Do you agree with the?
Oh, yeah, he's fantastic. Here's the thing that I want everyone to think about how he manages. And I think this will kind of like make you go, oh, I didn't think about that. The thing that we play every, I think it's 3 years, where the World Baseball Classic, okay? When they started that, everybody thought, well, the U.S. is just going to dominate this. Why are they even bothering? They'll just crush everybody. But we couldn't beat anybody, okay? I mean, the Dominican, Venezuela, Japan for sure. I mean, Mexico. Everybody played, and you watch those games, and I didn't watch a lot of them, but the thing I noticed was, wow, I'm watching Venezuela play Mexico. They're playing like their life depended on this. They're playing with such passion, such pride, and like guys that I know, because I watch them in the big leagues, haven't moved a runner over in 3 years. Now they're moving runners over, and you know what I mean? They're playing to win the game no matter what. They're playing like it's a World Series game. Then I'll watch a USA team play, and I feel like I'm watching the Major League Baseball All-Star game. They're just showing up. Hey, yeah, this is cool, you know, and I'm going to do best. Hopefully I'll hit a couple home runs. You know, it's just exhibition games, like the All-Star game basically is. You know, we'll have a home run hitting contest, maybe even BP before the game. That's the way the USA always played, and they always got crushed when it came to the games because they ain't moving anybody over. They're down by 3. They're trying to hit a solo home run in the 8th inning because that's why I'm here. I'm not here. I'm here to show off my talents because I'm one of the best players in our country. And then Leyland showed up. And I don't know what he said to those guys, but now all of a sudden our guys aren't playing like it's an all-star game. They're playing like they're in the World Series. Huge change in the attitudes. You hear them talk about it in the interviews. Bednar played on that team for a little. I don't know if he's there the whole time, but he was there for a long time. And he said, and he told me, he says, unbelievable. The guys were just win, win, win. That's all they cared about. You had all these star players on there that, you know, lay down a bunt, hit the ball the other way, whatever it took, they were going to do it to win the game, and they ended up winning. No other of these big name managers, well, either didn't care to or couldn't get those guys to play like it was a baseball game instead of just some exhibition game. Leyland was the only guy that's been able to do that. And from what I understand, his greeting speech was something to behold. I would love if somebody would have taped that. I would like to hear what he said. Yes, sir.
In that light, I've seen it in the NFL, somewhat in the NHL, and now Major League Baseball. Do you think with all this computer talking about strikes and balls, we're getting away from the organicness of these games, that they're now just cut and dry to win and make money and so forth, rather than the love of the game, the organicness?
I agree with you 100%, but that's not the people that are running it aren't feel that way anymore. The other people, we're all like get off my lawn type guys. And that's what, and anytime I go to make this argument, that's what I get thrown back at me by the younger generation. Like if you look at a lot of coaches, managers, especially general managers, they never really played baseball. A lot of general managers just come right out of
Their business.
Yeah, it's a business. They could be running a stock brokerage or something because they're using the same company that did a lot of work for like stock companies and things. They, you know, telling you what stocks are good and stuff. With all those numbers, they got into sports. They got into sports, and now, you know, we're basically doing the same thing. We're looking at trends and all this kind of stuff, and on any given night, you throw all that stuff out the window. You know, like it was told me one time when it first started coming, this is probably about 15 years ago, first started really happening. And they started talking about what guys swing at all the time. And you know, so-and-so swings at this pitch on this count all the time and misses it and all this kind of stuff. And this guy throws this pitch all the time on this count. 2-1 count, he throws a slider 15% of the time. And I'm like, well, I'm sitting there thinking about that, and I go, yeah. I go, if it's the third inning and there's no score, maybe we're up a run, and I got a 2-1 count on a hitter, he's got some power, nobody on base, I'm probably throwing a fastball 80% of the time. But now if I happen to get lucky and I'm in the game in the 7th, and that same guy's up there, in the same one-run game, he ain't getting a slider. I mean, he ain't getting a fastball. Never. I'm putting a wrinkle in it. He's going to have to hit something that spins out of the ballpark if I'm going to lose the game. So here's two different situations that they average out and come up with this swing rate or pitch, you know, whatever, or what the pitcher throws. Well, no, that's because that particular night there was a situation that doesn't happen very often that was there because it was how the game went, and your averages aren't doing me no good out there on that mound.
That's the organic.
Yeah, and here's another thing, a pitcher. Do you guys know anything about pitching? There's nights where I couldn't throw a slider through that door. So what good is it? Oh, this guy can't hit a slider. Well, I can't throw one. You know, so, you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it because there are still human beings out there. And, you know, I don't have nothing about looking at the numbers, but let's not make hard, fast decisions because that's what the numbers say. That's where I am with that. In the back, yes, sir.
What's the success at the end of the year for the Pirates?
What's the what?
What are they going to do this year?
Oh, I don't know. I guess wrong last year. The year before. You know, last year I was hoping they'd win about 70 games. I thought that would be where they'd top out. And then about halfway through the season, I thought, well, they might not win 60. And then they ended up winning, what, 76, 77, something like that. They had a great finish to the season, surprised everybody. So it's very hard to predict. It's like, I think what you need to do is you need to really make a good, solid prediction, you have to look at the individual situations. Like O'Neal Cruz, our shortstop. What kind of a player is he going to be this year? You know, and do your best at figuring that out and then apply that to the season and see where you're at. Now, I have a hard time with the starting rotation being kind of thin, and, you know, what's going to happen at second base, what's going to happen at first base, what's going to happen at right field, what's the catching situation going to be. So I can say, you know, we might, on the top end, be a 500 team. On the bottom end, we're going to take a couple steps back. There's going to be a big range there, depending on how some of these guys performed that weren't there last year. So, yes.
Since our bullpen was probably the strongest part of our team last year.
I agree with that.
Paying Chapman $10 million or something, couldn't the money have been used better to bolster our catchers or first basemen?
You would have to, for me to give you a really good answer with that, and this is, I know this is like I'm avoiding it, but this is the truth. This is how I feel. I've been asked this question many times over the years. I got to know what the alternative was. Like, if you could have told me, here's this starting pitcher that won 11 games last year and had an ERA in the low 4s. We could have got him. He wants to sign a one-year contract because he thinks he can make a big long-term contract if he has backs that up with another really good year. He might get a 4-year contract or something. So he wants a one-year contract. He wants $10 million. I would have said, well, I want that guy, rather than the bullpen guy. But I don't know if that guy is available. I don't know if that guy was out there. So that's kind of where I am with that. I don't know. The only person that knows is the person that's on the phone with all the other GMs as to what you can get, or not other GMs, well, yeah, other GMs sometimes, but agents and stuff, to see what you can get for $10 million. You know, off the top of my head, yeah, that seems, might be a little steep. He had a really good year last year, but as you said, the bullpen is kind of our strength right now. And maybe, you know, you can say, well, maybe they are going to trade Bednar. Or maybe they're planning on having 3 starters and we're going to have 2 bullpen games every rotation turn. And so they want the bullpen to be as deep as they can. So maybe they went that way. Maybe there's no starting pitching out there to buy. Maybe there was no catcher to go out and buy, which probably is the case. I don't know. I'd have to look, see who's out there and who's available. But, I mean, you can always go out and get good defensive catchers. They're out there all the time. But I'm tired of that. You know, we got, you know, we went to the DH, but we still have a pitcher hitting. That's kind of how I feel sometimes with our catching over the last year or two. So, yes.
One quick question.
Sure.
Tommy John surgery.
Yes.
I was a pitcher also. I never seen so many people going in for Tommy John surgery. When I pitched, that was back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what, you have any?
Well, the only guy in the 60s that did it was Tommy John.
Right.
So, in fact, I think he might have been like 71, 72, something like that. Actually, it was a little earlier. Because even when I played, it really wasn't, it didn't become commonplace till you like got into the 90s, I think. That's when it really started kicking in. But you know, I've seen guys that are throwing 98 miles an hour and walk off the field. They're not getting anybody out. 2 weeks later, they're getting Tommy John surgery. Now, how bad was their arm? They're throwing 98. Now, I tore my ligament, and they told me to try and throw a pitch again, and I threw it like 10 feet over the catcher's head, because when I got right here, it was like, ah! Now, how can guys go out there and be throwing the ball 98 miles an hour and then go and say, yeah. So I think a lot of guys, now I had so many times where my elbow would hurt, and you just kind of deal with it a little bit, you know? I don't think that happens anymore. You get something wrong with your elbow nowadays, boom, you're going in there, you're going on to, they don't call it the disabled list anymore, I'm not sure what they call it, but you're in there and you're having Tommy John. And then you're out year and a half, basically 2 years. Because even when you come back, you know, they're babying you along and all that stuff. And I was told by our doctor, I hurt mine in August. Actually, the very first game I ever pitched as a Pirates when I popped. Popped in the 9th inning, pitching to Socha. But I wouldn't, my arm was hurting, my elbow was hurting. But I've just now finally made it back to the big leagues after that Atlanta debacle. I'm winning like 4-1. I'm pitching into the 9th inning here. Going to be a complete game, my first game ever with a new team. I'm not going to go to Chuck and say, hey, my elbow hurts. I don't want to go back out there. Well, I went out there and it popped. And then I was done for the rest of that year. And our doctor at the time said, okay, you're not going to pitch anymore. Just don't touch a baseball for the rest of the season. It will grow back and heal by the time next spring training came. And that's what happened. It still was a little bit sore during spring training, but by May of that year, I didn't feel it anymore at all. I did lose a couple mile an hour off my fastball at that time. I had to kind of start learning how to be a better pitcher after that happened. But that doesn't happen nowadays. I don't know of anybody that said, no, I'm not having Tommy John, I'm just going to let it heal naturally and then we'll go get him next year. That doesn't happen anymore. Nobody wants to take a chance on losing a 2 mile an hour. Yes?
It seems to me that back in the old days, you don't have so many people, you know, blowing arms and having all these problems, and they didn't do pitch count. Nobody, I can remember when you didn't even know the pitch count.
Well, we knew in the dugout. Nobody else knew.
But it seems to me the emphasis with the radar and on the speed of the fastball.
Yeah, that's true too. That's a good point.
I don't know what you.
I mean, everybody can turn around and look and see what they're throwing on any given night. Whereas if we wanted to know what we were throwing, we wouldn't know till like the next day. We'd have to go up and talk to one of the scouts, and there would be three different, if you talk to three different scouts, you got three different numbers, because they all use their own guns. And the reason they did that, too, I always wondered about that. The reason they use their own guns is because the different guns, they were all calibrated the same. But it depended on where they picked up the flight of the ball. Because I didn't know this, but when you let go of a ball, the fastball, by the time it hits catcher's glove, it loses 8 miles an hour.
Yeah, sure.
And so depending on where that radar picked up the flight of the ball, if you were throwing 95, it might say 92 here. The next guy's gun might say 89, then the next guy's gun might have said, 91. So you never really got, but they all used their own gun because of that, because they didn't care what the final number was. They're looking for consistency. So they all use different guns. Nowadays, the thing you see nowadays all the time up on a board, that is the technology, it's telling you what the speed of the ball is, like 1.5 inches out of the hand. So when somebody's throwing 98, if you had the Wayback Machine, they're throwing about, and the old radar guns are probably throwing 95, 96 at most. So that's another thing. Everybody says, oh, everybody throws 100 mile an hour nowadays. Well, everybody would be throwing about, the real hard throwers would be throwing about 97, 96 30 years ago, which was what the hard throwers threw 36. So everybody's, they're throwing about the same. A 450-foot home run was a long home run 30 years ago. It's a long home run today. A real fast guy going down to first base gets there in 4 flat. Real fast guy 30 years ago getting down to first base, get there in 4 flat. So a lot of this stuff has not changed all that much. A little bit. There's probably, I will say this, there's more guys in the major leagues that can throw hard than there were. There used to be more, because you had to pitch more. So every team would have a couple real hard throwers, and then the other 7 or 8 guys would be more pitchers. And it's not like that nowadays, because everybody has to just pitch an inning. Starters can go 5, so the emphasis now is more on strikeouts and velocity. All right, anybody have one last question and we'll leave? No? All right, we're good. Thank you.